Hello everyone. Let the fire in your mind do the talking as the city lights rise. The first time Mira saw New York, she felt both very small and very big at the same time. And this strange mix already whispered one quiet line in her head again and again. Different place, different rules. But she did not listen yet. The airport glass shone like water. Yellow cabs moved like fast toys. And loud voices came from every side. Some kind, some tired, some angry. Her backpack pulled on her narrow shoulders. Her cheap suitcase had one small crack near the wheel. And her wallet hid one short truth. She did not have much money. So every small mistake could cost her more than she liked to think. On the plane from Warsaw, her grandmother held her hand and said in a slow, heavy voice, "Remember, child, different place, different rules. So watch, listen, learn before you act." And Mira smiled and nodded. But in her heart she also thought, rules are rules. The air in the arrivals hall felt warmer than home, and smells mixed together. Coffee, fried food, perfume, sweat, and strong cleaning soap. And her mind jumped from one sign to another while she tried to read too fast. A man at the passport desk looked at her with flat eyes and said, "Purpose of visit," and for 1 second her English flew away. Then came back in a rush as she answered, "Study, English program, 3 months." And he stamped the page and pushed it back without smile. And she thought, maybe people here did not like to waste time on soft words. Outside, a young driver with a round, friendly face held a cardboard sign, Mira Kowalska, and waved at her with quick little moves. And as she walked to him with careful steps, she repeated to herself, "I will be smart. I will spend little. I will be smart." The city at night looked like a dream, made from glass and stone and noise. Car horns cried, sirens cut the air, and tall buildings rose like black ships with bright windows. And Mira pressed her forehead to the taxi window and whispered in Polish, "I did it. I really did it," while the driver spoke on his phone in fast Spanish. At the small student house in Queens, the manager, a thin woman named Carol, with soft gray eyes, gave her a key and a paper of simple rules. No loud noise after 10, clean the kitchen after use, no guests after midnight. And at the bottom in big letters, when in doubt, ask, because different place, different rules. And Mira almost laughed, because the same line now came from every side like a song. Her room was narrow but bright, with one bed, one desk, and a window that looked at a fire escape, and a piece of sky. And when she opened the window, the sound of the city came in at once, strong and strange and alive. She put her one big photo of family near the bed, put her grandmother's old metro ticket under her pillow as a good luck charm, and told herself, "I will touch this ticket when I feel lost, and it will remind me who I am and why I am here." On the first morning, hunger woke her early, and her wallet already felt too light, so she walked down the street to a small diner with a big bright sign and red seats that looked soft. Inside, a woman with tired eyes and a name tag that said Jess gave her a menu and a quick smile, and loud music played from a small speaker near the counter. Mira looked at the prices with a small shock. Each number felt sharp, but she chose the cheapest breakfast, eggs, toast, and coffee, and told herself, "I will eat one big meal, and then small snacks later." The food came fast, hot and simple, and the coffee smelled rich and strong. And for a short moment the city fear went away as she ate. When she finished, Jess left a small rectangle of paper on the table, the bill, and walked off to serve someone else. And the numbers again made Mira's heart beat a little harder. She counted each dollar like a little soldier leaving her side, heaving her side. At home, the price on the bill was the price you paid. No extra math, no secret rule, and money was already a heavy stone in her bag. So when she put the exact sum on the table and walked out, she felt careful and proud, like a person who plans well. She already stood outside when the door opened behind her, and Jess called out, "Miss, hey, you forgot the tip," and her voice carried a mix of surprise, anger, and hurt. Mira turned with a hot face and said, "Sorry, I paid. Look, it is all there," and held up her hands a little. And some people at tables lifted their heads to watch. Jess wiped her hands on her apron and said, "You did pay the bill, yes, but here we live from tips. You cannot just leave zero. That is like saying my work is worth nothing." And her eyes looked more tired now, and also more cold. In Mira's country, Tips were a small thank you. Nice but not a rule, and only for very good service. And even then the sum stayed small. So this new idea that not giving was like an insult cut into her quiet plans. For one quick second, pride fought fear in her chest. She wanted to say, I am a student. I have no money. Why must I pay more? But another part of her whispered in her grandmother's slow voice, different place, different rules, different place. With a red face, she walked back, opened her wallet with stiff fingers, and put $2 extra on the table, and they felt like two small parts of her dream that walked away. Jess looked at the money, then at her, and her tone became softer as she said, Thank you. I know this is hard when you are new, but remember here you must not leave without a tip, okay? And Mira only nodded, her English now like thick mud in her mouth. As she stepped back onto the street, she felt a mix of shame and slow understanding, and a question rose like cold smoke. If even simple money rules were so different, what other things must she not do here without knowing? At language school that week, the building was old red brick, and the hall smelled of paper, coffee, and something sweet from a small bakery near the door. And her class was a mix of faces from many countries, bright scarves, dark hair, pale skin, many accents. Their teacher, a tall man, with a soft round stomach named Mr. Riley, spoke in clear, slow English and wrote new words on the board in big letters, and the room felt safe and warm as long as she listened more than she spoke. During a break, some students began to share stories of strange things in New York. One boy from Brazil talked about huge pizzas. A girl from Japan talked about loud subway singers, and laughter rolled around the small circle. Mira wanted to join. She wanted to be part of this new group, not just the quiet girl in the corner with a thin notebook. So she searched in her mind for a funny story from home that could cross the ocean. In her town, friends often joked about each other's weight, age, or clothes. Not with hate, but with rough love. And people answered with a bigger joke and loud laughter. So to her, such jokes showed closeness, not cruelty. She looked at Mr. Riley's light blue shirt, a little tight on his belly, and at the way he drank his tea with 3 sugar cubes, and a joke formed in her mind like a small bright ball. When the group was quiet for a second, she said with a quick smile, In my country, we say teacher, who eats so much sugar will not fit in the door soon. And she lifted her hands to show a big round shape, her eyes shining, waiting for the shared laugh that always came at home. But the room fell silent in a different way, slow and heavy, like snow. And one girl from Egypt looked at the floor, and a boy from Spain made a small face and shook his head a little. Mr. Riley's smile froze for 1 second, then came back, but thinner, and he said, We try not to make jokes about people's bodies here, okay, Mira? In a slow, patient tone, but his ears grew a little red. A hot wave moved over her neck and cheeks, and she wished her chair could open and hide her inside. And in her mind she shouted, I wanted to be friendly, not cruel. Why is this wrong here? Later, when the class worked in pairs, almost no one chose to sit with her, and she felt the cold space around her chair grow wide, and the words different place, different rules walked around her like quiet ghosts. At lunch she sat alone with her sandwich from a cheap store, and 3 girls from class spoke in low voices at another table. And sometimes their eyes moved to her in a way like small birds, and her heart asked, How can I learn if every joke and habit may hurt someone here? That night in her room, she held the old metro ticket under her pillow and slid it between her fingers again and again. An emotional little ritual, and in the dark she repeated a new line. In a new country, respect small rules. In a new country, respect small rules. In a new country, respect small rules, until sleep came slow and heavy. Days turned into weeks, and Mira started a list in her head of things she must not do, even when they felt normal in her bones, and each item came from a small pain. She must not leave a restaurant without a tip, or people felt insulted, and she felt ashamed. She must not make jokes about bodies, age, race, or even some jobs, because here words about people stayed sharp longer and cut deeper. She must not touch strangers without asking, and she learned this rule in a way that made her hands shake one bright Sunday afternoon. On that day, the sky over New York was clear and blue, and she walked in Central Park for the first time. Green trees, small lakes, people on bikes, children shouting and running, dogs with funny clothes and music from a street band near a path. She watched a small boy with curly hair run in circles and laugh. his arms open, while his mother sat on a bench and looked at her phone, and the child's joy pulled at Mira's heart, because it looked like her little cousin at home. When the boy came too close to the path, near some fast bikes, instinct moved faster than thought, and she reached out, touched his shoulder, and pulled him gently back with a soft, careful little one. The boy only laughed, but his mother looked up, saw a stranger's hand on her child, and her face changed in 1 second from calm to wild fear. She jumped up and shouted, "Do not touch my kid. What are you doing?" Her voice high and sharp, and some people turned their heads, eyes narrow. Mira raised both hands at once and stammered, "I just help." He was close to bikes, but the English words fought and broke in her throat. The woman put her arm around the child and held him close, then said, "You never touch someone else's kid here. Never, you understand?" And her eyes were wet and angry, as if Mira had done something dark and planned. A man nearby in a blue cap said, "You cannot do that, miss. Not in this country," and shook his head in slow judgment, and she felt like a small bug under glass. Tears pressed behind her own eyes now, not from guilt, but from the hard truth that good intent did not always matter here, the same way it did at home. And again a sharp line cut through her. In a new country, you must respect fears you do not understand yet. She walked away fast, her feet heavy, and sat on a far bench where nobody knew her. And her mind asked, if I must not help a child in danger, then what kind of person should I be in this place? That night she did not call her family, because she did not know how to explain that simple care for a child felt like a crime here, and she only whispered into the dark room. Different place, different rules, different pain, different fears. At school, the weeks moved on, and another student began to shine where Mira felt dull. A girl named Kendra, who had parents from Jamaica but grew up in Brooklyn, and she entered the classroom with easy jokes that never crossed lines and clothes that mixed bright colors with smooth style. Kendra became a kind of star in the small group. She helped others with homework, where to stand on the subway, when to look away, what words you must not say in public, and teachers smiled when she spoke. Often Kendra looked at Mira with a mix of pity and light contempt, as if she watched a child who kept touching a hot stove. And one day after class she walked beside her on the stairs and said, "You keep doing weird things, girl. People here will not like you if you do not learn fast." Mira felt her chest tighten and answered, "I try. But everything is new, and sometimes I do not see the line," and she hated how weak her voice sounded as they went down step by step. Kendra shrugged and said, "It is not so hard. Just remember, in America some topics are like fire. You must not joke about guns, bombs, race, or sex, and you must not ignore lines and tips." And her words rattled like little stones in a glass jar. Mira thought of how, at home, people made dark jokes to feel less fear. Sometimes even about war or death, and laughter worked like a small shield, and she wondered if here people carried softer hearts or only stronger masks. One late evening, weeks later, this question turned real in the worst way. In a crowded subway station under the city, where stale air smelled of metal, dust, and too many lives passing. She was tired from study and from a part-time cleaning job she took to pay for books, and her head felt heavy as she walked down the stairs with other people, a river of bodies. Near the bottom of the steps, 2 police officers stood with serious faces and checked bags at random, and everyone moved a little slower near them, eyes down, hands still. In her country, people often made nervous jokes in front of police to show they were not afraid, and this habit lived deep in her body, ready to wake when fear rose. One officer, a big man with a square jaw and calm dark eyes, pointed at her bag and said, "Ma'am, can you open your backpack, please?" In a voice that held no hate but no warmth. Her heart jumped, not because she hid anything bad, only books, a small sandwich, and an old metro ticket, but because power in a uniform always made her stomach twist. People behind her grew impatient. Feet shifted, a woman sighed loudly, and somewhere a train door beeped again and again before it closed. To break the tension, and maybe to show she was one of them. Someone relaxed and modern. She smiled too wide and said in light English, "Do not worry, officer. No gun, no bomb, just boring books," and laughed a little at her own words. The sound of the station changed in one sharp cut. Some heads turned, The other officer's hand moved a little closer to his belt, and the man in front of her froze for half a second. The officer who checked her stared right into her eyes and said, in a deep, low tone, "Ma'am, we do not joke about guns and bombs here. Ever. Do you understand me?" And his words came out like heavy stones. Mira's small laugh died at once. Her tongue felt thick, and cold sweat grew between her shoulder blades, as she realized that this was not a funny line in a movie. This was her real life and her real mistake. He checked her bag with slow, careful hands, then closed it and gave it back, still with that same hard look, and said, "You are lucky. This is just a warning. But remember, you must not say things like that in this country. People are afraid for good reasons." The people behind her now stared with open disapproval, some with real fear, as if her foolish words alone could break the station, and shame wrapped around her like a tight coat. She walked down to the train with rubber legs, sat on a hard plastic seat, and looked at her reflection in the dirty window. And for the first time since she came, she thought, "Maybe I do not belong here. Maybe I am too wrong for this place." As the train moved, lights flashing on and off in the tunnel, the list in her head became very clear, and each line pressed like a lesson in stone. Do not leave without a tip. Do not joke about bodies. Do not touch children. Do not treat dark topics as play. Do not forget that fear here has its own history and weight. Her hands found the old metro ticket in her pocket now, not under her pillow, and she rubbed the smooth paper between finger and thumb in her small private ritual. And in her mind a new sentence formed. Simple but strong. In a new country you must learn its pain before you play with its words. When she reached her stop and climbed back into the night air, the city lights looked a little less like a dream and a little more like a test. And she stood on the sidewalk and asked herself a quiet, serious question. Will I run home from these rules, or will I grow bigger than my fear? That weekend she sat in her room with a cheap notebook, the cover bent at the corners, and wrote on the first page, "Different place, different rules," and under that, in careful block letters, she wrote 5 things she would not do again. Not because someone shouted at her, but because she now understood the minds behind the rules. She wrote, "I will not forget to tip in diners and cafes, because here tips feed people, not just pride." She wrote, "I will not joke about bodies, race, or pain, because here words burn longer than I see." She wrote, "I will not touch children or even adults without asking, because here fear for safety sits near the skin." She wrote, "I will not make jokes about guns, bombs, or attacks, not even small ones, because here history bleeds behind these words." She wrote, "I will not treat the lines and quiet rules of this place as silly, because for people here they are walls that keep away storms I do not know yet." Then she added one more line, softer. "I will ask before I act when I am not sure, because in a new country, respect for small rules is respect for people's hearts." As she read the page again, slow and careful, she felt something inside her shift, like a door that opened not to the city, but inside her own mind. And she saw that this was not only about America. It was about any new place, any new group, any new life. On Monday, she brought the notebook to class, with the page folded open, and before the lesson began, she walked up to Mr. Riley with knees that shook a little, and said, "Last time I joked about your sugar, I was wrong. I come from a place where such jokes mean love, but I see here it hurts. So I wrote some rules for myself. Can I share them with the class?" "So I wrote some rules for myself. Can I share them with the class?" Her voice trembled, but her eyes stayed on his, and for a moment she feared he would shrug and send her back to her seat. But instead his face softened in a way she had not seen before. He said, "Of course, Mira, that is very brave," and turned to the class. "Everyone, today we will start with something important, something about how to live in a new country." And those words alone felt like a small medal on her chest. She stood at the front of the room, hands cold, heart loud, and read her lines in slow, clear English. And as she spoke, she saw small nods from many heads, not only from new students, but also from Kendra and others who grew up here. When she finished, there was a short silence. Then the boy from Spain raised his hand and said, "I also made some mistakes like that. Maybe we can all add our own lines." And a low, warm laugh moved through the room, the good kind. Together they built a shared list on the board. not only of do not rules, but also small do this lights. Like ask when you do not know. Explain your culture when people are ready to hear. Say sorry fast, but also forgive fast. And the phrase different place, different rules now sounded not like a threat. Kendra waited near the door after class and said, "Hey, that was cool. You know, I grew up here. But even I forget sometimes that people from other places see things different." And her tone held real respect now, not just thin half smiles. Mira answered, "I also forget that your fears are real. Not only rules and books." And for the first time their eyes met in a way that felt equal, like two bridges touching in the middle. Weeks turned into months, and Mira became the student who welcomed new arrivals. She showed them how to pay on the bus, how to say thank you and excuse me in ways that fit the city, when to laugh and when to stay quiet. And each time she helped, she repeated her core lesson in simple words. In a new country, respect small rules, because they protect big hearts. When a shy boy from Turkey once left a cafe without a tip and came back red and confused, she smiled and said, "Do not worry. I did the same on my first day. Here tips are not a gift. They are part of the price. Different place, different rules." And he sighed with relief. When a girl from China reached to touch a stranger's dog without asking, and the owner frowned, Mira gently placed a hand near her arm and whispered, "Here many people want you to ask first, not because they hate you, but because they carry their own fears. In a new country, respect small rules." And the girl nodded and tried again with a safe, polite, "Can I pet your dog?" And got a big smile in return. With a big smile in return. Each small success became a new proof that learning rules was not about losing yourself, but about gaining more safe space to be yourself in a wider world. After 3 months, on her last night before she flew home to visit her family, she walked alone to a small hill in a park where she could see the lights of Manhattan, tall and bright like another sky, and she held her old metro ticket in one hand and her new notebook in the other. She thought of the girl who arrived with a cracked suitcase and a full head of wrong jokes and right dreams, who thought people were the same everywhere and only language was hard, and she smiled at her with gentle pity. Then she thought of who she had become, a person who could say, "I know my own culture, I respect it. But I also respect that here in this city, some words feel like knives, and some gestures feel like storms," and pride warmed her like a soft coat. What was simple. She came as a stranger, who did not see the hidden walls in other hearts, and hit them again and again. What changed was clear. She learned that every land had its own quiet wounds, and its own small rules, and that kindness in a new place began not only with warm words, but with careful listening and a mind ready to change. What came of it was more than good English and city photos. She became the kind of person who could walk into any new culture and say, "Different place, different rules. I will not fear this truth. I will use it as my guide. I will use it." As the wind moved her hair and the city hummed below, Mira whispered, "In a new country, respect small rules, because they show big love." And she felt ready for whatever new lights and new mistakes waited in her next chapter. If this story touched some small question in you, and also helped your English grow, then walk with it a little longer. And if you like this story, subscribe for more simple tales that teach gently and move deeply.